So this quarter, we're going to work together on a collaborative review board that's going to bring together our understandings of the ELL and bilingual endorsements competencies. Why? A refresher never hurts. The courses are spread out for some of you, especially over multiple years. Also, now you're getting to do more hands-on work with students. And so hopefully some of the things maybe you read a year ago, 2 years ago, and at that time you thought, this is a great idea, I can't wait to try this. This will help refresh your memory so you can try it. And finally, a really practical reason, which is that you are going to be taking one of the West E content tests near the end of this quarter, or you can take it later. And this will serve as a review for you. And so that's something that is really important for us to build into this course for you, is just a review and preparation for taking that course and for starting your careers. So we're going to use Trello. Let me just show you first in general what it looks like. It's organized as a bunch of columns. Each column can scroll up and down. And what I've tried to do is to chunk the competencies into categories. Keep in mind that these are somewhat arbitrary. I've tried to put things together that make sense, but there are certainly things that are ideas that are cross-cutting. And let's think about this as well. For example, culturally and linguistically sustaining pedagogy. The idea of CSP is that it is something that cuts across all of our work, right? It's not just a portion of the day, but it impacts on our work with families, on how we create language learning opportunities, how we talk about content, how we do multiple things, right? So keep in mind that these are all these columns are interacting with one another, but in order to make them a little more manageable, I have chunked them. So each of you is going to be responsible for one or two of these columns, and that will depend on how many pages in the book and also how many competencies. So the idea is that each of you is going to be responsible for roughly 18 to 20 pages out of the book, though in a few cases less. And the reason for that will be because some of the columns, though there's not much of our current book that speaks to them, there are many competencies that that individual will need to kind of look into and think through. And that's going to take more time and some additional readings. And so I've given those individuals less in our current book. Another thing to keep in mind is even though you're not going to be reading the whole book at this time, or at least responsible for it, it is a really nice summary. And so I do encourage you to read as much of it as you can, as you have time for, and then hang on to it and use it as a resource later in combination with this Trello board. Okay. So what are you going to be doing? You're going to be adding to Trello question cards and competency cards. On the question cards, you're going to add summaries of that question. And then on competency cards, you're going to add ideas and resources to help us review that competency. And when your cards are done, I'm going to ask you to change the cover to green so that we know. So let me show you briefly what that's going to look like. So if we look at the cards, you'll notice first of all that the competency cards all say competency, and they have either a green or a blue label. I'm going to click on that label so that then it expands and it tells you what that label stands for. So anything in green, all of you are responsible for that competency. Those of you that are getting the bilingual endorsement, in addition, are responsible for the blue. If at any point you forget what the labels are, you can either click on them like I did, or you can go over to Show Menu. Let me show you from the start. It'll start like this. You'll click on More, then Labels. And you'll see we have multiple labels. And I anticipate we will probably create some new ones. And if you have an idea for one, go ahead. Create a new label. Make sure you use a new color, and then add the name for it, okay? So that's where labels are. Let's say that you are in charge of family and community. So that means you have this column. You're going to start, I think, with the questions from the book. The HF is just an abbreviation of the author's names. And then the question that is related most closely to this topic. You'll notice that I've given the questions a number-letter combination. I'll show you what that means here in a minute and how you can find it in your textbook. But the idea is you'll open up that card, and in the description, you want to add just a short summary. It doesn't need to be a lot. There are many cards here. We don't want each card behind it to have like an essay, okay? So get to what is the most critical information from that question and put it here. This, you don't need to make it fancy, but I will show you. There is formatting help. And the one I anticipate you may use is these. The hyphens will create bullet points. You might decide that you want to do a header. So here's how this would work. Type, 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 or apparently tape. And then I'm going to put this under it if I want the computer to turn that into a heading. Again, you don't need to do this, pretty fancy. Or let's say I want bullet points, idea 1, idea 2, and then when I hit save, it converts it into a header, bullet points, that kind of thing. Again, you don't need to get fancy. I highly recommend bullet points. The other thing that you can do here is add attachments. Attachments might be, maybe you'd rather talk us through your answer. So a link to the computer and then a link to maybe an audio file that you make. Instead of writing out your answer, you might decide to just make a short audio of it and put it here for us. Or maybe you'll put a link to a YouTube video of maybe something you've tried out using with your students that you think is a great example of, I don't know, if I think about this question, maybe something that you shared with parents, an activity they can watch YouTube together and do it with their kids during this time of hybrid and virtual learning. So it doesn't have to be like links that are just like, I'll call this academic answers to the question. It can also, and I think it's great if it also includes practical ways you can, apply the competency as well, okay? Now, you can add as much as you want. The minimum is that you answer the question, and that at least on some of the cards, you try to add extra stuff for us to look at. And then what will happen is then we might have some conversation here between all of us. All of us are going to be linked to the board. One thing you can do is watch your own cards so that you get an email, a notification, if somebody does anything on your board. The other thing you might want to do, let's say you're reading somebody's card and you think, oh, wow, this is really interesting. This reminds me of something that this other person in our class was talking about. I'm going to at them. Why is this not working? Okay, because you have to start typing. And right now, I'm the only member of the board, but soon all of us will show up here, and you can select that person to make sure that they now get a notification that you're talking to them here. Otherwise, they may not see it. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. When you are ready for us to take a look at what you shared, you're going to go to the cover and just simply turn it green for us. Green for go, just so that we know it's done and we can take a look, okay? Then we can just close, it will auto-save. And so now, theoretically, I would know that question 4J is ready for us to take a look. So those are the question cards. You're also going to have competency cards. And what I want you to think about with the competency cards are, did my question cards and what I read in the book get at those competencies? Or are there still areas where we could use more information in our review? And that's where you would open up one of your competency cards and add to it any information, a link to an article, or a summary of kind of your thoughts on this competency. And this is also going to be the kind of thing that we all may add to, okay? But I want you, if you're in charge of that topic, to go ahead and make a start at, okay, what do we need to know and be able to do to address this competency? And you're not on your own. So if you read through a competency and you think, my section in the chapter did not help, and I'm not sure where to start, I don't want you to have a 5-hour, spend 5 hours on Google Scholar, okay? I'd like for you, the whole goal of this is for us to do a pretty efficient review. So come to me with that and say, hey, I've thought about this, this, and this, but could you point me in the right direction towards some sort of a short resource that would help me get at this competency that I could summarize for my colleagues. Okay? Now, so far I've only talked about adding to the cards that are already here, but you might decide you want to add more cards. I can think of at least 2 types of cards you might add, and there may be more that we brainstorm together. So one kind of card might be a question. So kind of a broad question about that column that nothing in the column really gets at. And if you would both label it as question and, I'm really wondering about this other thing, blah, blah, blah. And would you probably, especially if you think it's something that you'd like me to cover in class, go ahead and @ me or add me as a member. And then would you give it a label? And that's so it sticks out to all of us. So orange for the question label, okay? And then the other kind of card you might add, I am going to try to get a few guest speakers to come in and chat with us this quarter, especially because of the pandemic and you not being able to spend lots of quality time in schools. And so this would be a guest speaker idea. So let's, you all know incredible people in the communities, and because of the benefit of Zoom, we can actually bring in people that aren't here in, Bellingham, right? And so here's where you can share those ideas with me. Why not invite so-and-so? Okay? And again, would you please include me so that I notice it? And then would you also just give it a label so that it'll pop out in red that it's an idea for a guest speaker? And I'm also over at the far right. Do I still have it here? Ignore this. Course parking lot. And this is just questions that come up for you that just don't fit anywhere. This is a good place to put those, okay? But if the question or the person you're suggesting fits within a category, if you would put it there, just that will help keep all of us more organized as we do this work. All right, I believe that's it. Thanks.